Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be talking to you and explaining to you why you should avoid independent garages and also mechanic garages with your BMW. And there's a reason for that, and this E87 is a prime example of why you should be trying to do most of the work yourself on your BMW and not relying on garages or trusting independent garages to repair your car. So let's get on to this video.
Goddamn, get it done, will ya? Woo! When the blow up now, everybody's so unusual with it. Shit. But said times in his rhymes, cause his memories. We running through New York, so you know.
Okay guys, so just want to give the heads up. I'm not here to knock anyone because we are all human, we all make mistakes, and I don't expect everyone to know everything. That's just not the way the world works, and the world would be a boring place if everyone knew everything. And obviously, I'm not going to sit here myself and say I know everything about every single brand, because I do not. BMW is my speciality. Porsche, I'm still learning about myself even still to this day. But BMW, yes, I know very well, but I do not know the ins and outs of every other manufacturer like some people do. You know, some people are clued up on Ford and that's what they work on daily. Some people work on Vauxhall and some people work on Porsche daily, so that is their speciality. My speciality is BMW. But obviously, we all don't know everything, and there's always something to learn every day in our lives. Now, the reason I'm making this video is purely because obviously the last owner that had this car was taking it for a lot of repairs. And the reason he was taking it for a lot of repairs was due to how much running cost this car was costing him to run. Now, bearing in mind, he put his trust in a garage, and obviously I'm not going to give no names, so I'm not here to shame anybody, I'm not here to start cussing anybody, because obviously it's not their fault. As I said, it depends on the person who's working on the car. It could have been someone new. It just could have been that they just didn't understand how the way these cars work, which is perfectly normal and perfectly fine. It's what you go around and end up finding now. A lot of people are only used to E46s, E39s, the way they run. A lot of people that run specialist garages or independents come from an era where they would work at BMW based on when the E46 was around, or the E39. These newer generation E87, E90s, E60s, many people just don't understand because of the amount of electronics, which is perfectly normal. And that's what my channel is around for that reason. But obviously, matter of the fact is, he obviously took it to the garage, and for a whole year, he was putting a lot of money into this car, to the point he spent over £4,500 on this car. And that's doing the valve cover, starter motor, what else did he do? He done the water pump, thermostat, new spark plugs, just everything, new spark plugs, new air filter. And the reason he was doing so much of this work to this car was purely because of the running cost, because how much fuel it was using. Now, the garage doing all that overlooked obviously the one thing that was actually causing the fuel cost to be so high on this car, and obviously the guy getting very, very low miles per gallon. Now, the last owner did take this to Germany, and I dread to think how much it actually cost him on fuel actually when he went there, purely because of the fault that was actually wrong with this car. Now, bearing in mind, when I got it, obviously I'd done the Van solenoids, which were knackered anyway, and that was given a fault for the camshaft one, placed them both and no more faults. And we've only just finished doing the disc flaps. Now, the reason I'm actually bringing this up is because it is quite shocking, because as I just said to you, on this car, the starter motor was dumb, which would have meant that the garage would have had to take the manifold off to do the starter motor. But they actually overlooked the disc flaps, which are right there in the manifold. Now, obviously, a lot of garages claim they're specialists, but the only time they become specialists is if they get a code on the diagnostic string. Now, this car wasn't throwing a diagnostic error for the disc flaps, it was throwing an air mass system fault. Now, me obviously knowing how these engines run, I knew straight away it was the disc flaps, because it couldn't be anything else, because these cars didn't run on vacuum lines. Now, that being said, if this was an M54 engine, on the other hand, this would have been an absolute nightmare, and you probably would have had to use a smoke machine. But being on the M52, it was very, very easy to be able to pinpoint that it was the disc flaps. Now, I don't know how this was overlooked by the garage, bearing in mind they had the manifold off, and obviously they've done the valve cover, they've done the spark plugs, they've done the starter motor. I know they would have told the guy to do the water pump and thermostat, because as many of you guys know, the cooling system can actually affect your miles per gallon if the water pump ain't come to temperature, the thermostat's sticking, not opening properly. And that's probably what they would have told him. That's the reason he had the water pump and thermostat done, because they probably said, oh, the miles per gallon's probably bad, your fuel's going down very quickly because it ain't coming up to temperature, the thermostat's probably gone wrong. And they probably told them to replace the spark plugs as well, because a service will help it increase miles per gallon, or it's probably overdue a service. You know, the normal stuff that garages will tell you, because they don't want to look stupid, of course, and they don't want to make it look like they don't know what they're doing. So all they become is actually parts fitters and just fitting this, fitting that, fitting that, fitting that, without actually knowing how these cars actually run, and actually what actually makes them cause them certain faults. And as I said, that's not their fault. They probably don't just specialize in BMW, they probably specialize in a load of different cars. And that was clear from their website when I went on them, they specialize in everything. And the reason a lot of garages do that now, they don't just specialize in one brand, is because specializing in one brand can cost you a lot of money. Because if you only specialize in one brand and you only got that you specialize in BMW or independent BMW specialist, that will push other people with different car manufacturers for Audi, Volkswagen away from your garage. And that means it will lose you money in the long term. So a lot of people don't want to call themselves just an independent manufacturer specialist for one manufacturer, because you lose money that way. It is a very small profit to be made, especially when you're only dealing with one manufacturer, because parts, obviously, as many guys know, ain't cheap on BMW, and it's the same for Porsche. That's why a lot of people as well don't become certain Porsche specialists, because there's not much money to be made in becoming just that specific specialist on one car. Now, as I said though, this is the same situation that I had with my Blackie 6530i. Before I got it, I'd gone to a load of garages, had loads of receipts. Nobody could figure out this issue or that issue, and I had to hold with everything. And yet it had gone to so many so-called specialists. And that wasn't just the case with the E60, that was the same with the E63. Before my friend bought it, they had an independent mobile mechanic coming out to diagnose this, diagnose that, do this with the brakes, do that with the brakes, and the problem is still there. And it hasn't been rectified. And that's purely because, unless you understand them cars, you ain't gonna know how to fix them properly first time round. And that was the case with this E87. The guy had spent so much money on this car for it only to be this one problem. And this was the problem the whole time on this BMW M52 engine. These, both of them, the small and the big one, was robbing him of his fuel and robbing him of his miles per gallon. When the car would idle, it would dip the idle where these ain't being keeping closed, when the car's just literally sitting at idle, and it would drop to like 40 miles per gallon. Now we have the new ones of these in, the car is running absolutely magnificent. We took it on a long run on the motorway only today, and the car was averaging 38 miles per gallon, and the lowest it went down to was 33, and that was combined between driving in town, driving on the highway. It went down to around 33.6. Now, before I replaced these, this car was getting 22 miles per gallon. That was on the highway, and I'm running around town, it was even worse. I think it was 15. It was really, really bad. People don't understand how these can cause such an issue, and I understand this is why many garages overlook these because of that reason, because you wouldn't think these are causing an issue. As far as they're concerned, the car's running fine, it's starting fine, yeah, your miles per gallon are going down, and they try and blame it on water pump, thermostats, the most basic things that are basically very old school. And that's how you know most of the mechanics that work in these garages are very, very old school, because they're going back by years ago, how a sticking thermostat only would cause, you know, your fuel cost to be higher, and the car not coming up to temperature and not cooling properly will cause your miles per gallon to go down because it's not cooling efficiently. And that is a very old school term, and obviously it does still happen, but not on these BMW engines. These and the Vanos solenoids are the two most crucial parts to your miles per gallon and the fuel cost. If these or the solenoids fail, this is what's going to cause very, very bad gas mileage on them cars, because as many of you guys know, the solenoids as well is responsible for keeping the ignition timing in check for the Vanos system. And when they're not working properly, and obviously keeping the oil, you know, pumped up to the actual adjusters itself and keeping the oil flow correct, what ends up happening is the fuel and air mixture isn't correct, which then, like with these, when they were jammed open, it's dumping more fuel than air, then obviously causing, you know, it to overfuel itself, and then 1 minute it's injecting too much air and not enough fuel, which is then triggering the air mass system fault lights, which is why the car was throwing that code for that exact reason for these. And the solenoids are the same. That's why many people, you take it to a garage, they use the wrong scanner, they end up changing your camshaft sensors. Then the problem don't go away, and then they change another sensor and the problem don't go away. And that's the same thing here in the UK. You take it to a garage, the Vanos solenoids are so badly overlooked because on their scan tool it says camshaft position sensor, and it's definitely not the camshaft position sensor. Many of you guys already know, you've gone and done the same thing, changed that, and it wasn't the issue, it was the solenoids. And if it ain't the solenoids, it's the eccentric shaft sensor. That's another crucial point that's very, very overlooked. Many people have their valve cover gaskets changed, change the valve cover and don't change the important eccentric shaft sensor. And that is a crucial part that needs to be changed. That as well will cause all your rough idle, your misfires, a lot of different issues. And the same with ignition coils. Ignition coils are quite easy to determine if they're faulty or not. You know, you get a misfire, that throws up for a cylinder misfire, and it's very, very easy to actually diagnose. But also to the right person, because again, a garage can get a cylinder misfire mixed up for an ignition coil, spark plug, but in the same sense, it could actually be your Vanos solenoid that actually causes your misfire. And again, we see that on the M5. A load of misfires come up on the M5 for cylinder misfire on number 5, number 6, and then it ends up being the ionic control modules. And again, that's overlooked on the S85 engine, because many people seem to think, you wouldn't even believe that that little electronic box controls the distribution power to the ignition coils to actually fire them, but it actually does. That controls all the current going to the ignition coils to keep the current absolutely balanced so it doesn't give any over voltage to the ignition coils and end up just damaging them. That's what that ionic control module is actually there for. But many people, you take the car to a garage, and unless they understand the S85 engine, they will not understand that them modules actually control the ignition coils. You tell anyone that, they will be in shock. And then what do they say to you? This is why these cars are heaps of crap, because they're over-engineered. But you got to understand, they were way engineered before their time. And now people are just starting to learn about them. It's the same with all the electronics on the car, and it's still the same with the engines. And you know, we're in, what is it, 2023. This car's 2007. You would have thought most people these days would have been able to understand how these cars work. And what's shocking is, if these garages don't understand how the way these cars work and the way the engines work, with all the videos out there on YouTube, it's really, really shocking. And that's why, as I said, I'm hoping the guy who actually owned this car is actually watching, so he can see what the fault was all along, which was his disaflaps. And as I said, I've got the new ones in, and the car drives absolutely magnificently. Just changing the solenoids and changing them disaflaps, the car makes bags and bags of power. And it's such a shame that he never got to experience the full potential of this BMW M2 engine with the 3-stage manifold, because probably in his mind, he thought, oh, you know, it's underpowered crap and it's overhyped, which it really isn't. And that's the thing, you know, if this was his first and only N52 engine, he's gonna think it was all overhyped and loads of crap, and people would be telling him, no, it definitely is not. But he's gonna say his one was, but this is why it was. Because these are responsible for your low down torque, you know, and these really, really do help, especially when you do the kick down as well. These will actually deliver the torque needed, you know, for overtaking and for power. And without these working, he wouldn't have got the full experience of this M52 engine. And it's such a shame to say that, but obviously the garages were actually conning him and just ripping him off left, right and center for money, when all they had to do is literally take these out, check them, and his problem would have gone away. And that would have been the same if they had checked the codes and used a proper scanner and checked for the Vanos solenoids as well. Because when I actually got the car, the first code that come up was for variable intake camshaft solenoid. So that's what I mean. There was already a code there for the solenoid that was going. These will go coming up as well for the air mass system fault code. And that's why I got it all changed out now, and the car drives absolutely beautifully. Like I said, we're averaging 38 there on the motorway, and then combined it was around 33.6. So it was really, really, really good for, you know, a 130i engine. It's a 3-litre engine, and it was combining between 33 to 38 miles per gallon. Excellent, excellent fuel economy on these cars. And now this is done, now I'm seeing the fuel economy that is meant to have on these cars, because it was really, really bad that you could just go down the road and this car would use the same amount of fuel as like my M5 would, just going down the road. So it was absolutely ridiculous. And I know these cars very well. They should not be burning that much fuel. So if you do have a BMW, guys, I strongly recommend to try and do the work yourself, because a lot of parts do get overlooked by garages, and you cannot expect garages to know everything. You can't. With BMW, it's an enthusiast car. That's why there's so many videos. That's why there's so many channels that do BMW to try and help you, a lot of you guys out, because of that reason. Because garages, you can't expect them to know it all, and you can't expect us as YouTubers to know it all. As humans, everyone gets it wrong, And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm any saint and I don't get anything wrong, because there's loads of times I get stuff wrong and there's loads of times I get stuff right. But at the end of the day, we have to admit that and be human about that and just move on from that. And obviously you learn from your mistakes not to do it again. And it's the same with the garages. You know, if they do watch this video, if garages pick up on it, now garages will be more aware of to look for these disses when they do get a problem that obviously the MPG on an M52 isn't good. They'll be able to look at them certain things like the solenoids, like the disser flaps and the eccentric shaft sensor, and be able to pick up very quickly now what's wrong with it. So in theory, I'm trying to educate a lot of these garages on what can actually go wrong and not to falsely diagnose these cars anymore, because falsely diagnosing them can actually lead to complete failure, you know, and you end up seeing them with the disser flaps all broken off in the intake manifold, or it getting swallowed into one of the cylinders and crushed because obviously it was left too long. And that could have happened on this one, but only true, you know, we didn't really drive much until I actually found the issue, and now I found the issue, it's solved, and now the car's drivable. So as I said, guys, this wasn't here to bash anybody, this was purely just for advice. And like I say to you, if you do want to take your car to a garage, just have some knowledge yourself about what could be wrong and try and tell the garage, can you look at these for me? Can you look at that for me? And can you check it properly, because they are a known common problem. And just do your research on the car before taking it to garage, that you know you're clued up, that you can tell them if something isn't looked at or is overlooked, that you can get your car repaired correctly. And do ask them if you can provide the parts as well. So even if they try and replace something or they're not sure it's that, just say to them, if I provide you with the part and I buy the part, will you fit it for me? If they do, then it's a win situation for you. And obviously you've got your car back in tip-top condition. If you strongly believe that that is the problem with the car, buy the part and have the garage fit it. So I hope this is gonna help a lot of you guys as well understand why you gotta be careful when going to garages and when going to independent specialists. But thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.